Instead of those victims being protected and the perpetrators prosecuted, those girls were systematically failed. Many cases were covered up because of absurd concerns about so-called community relations. The whole country is shocked by the rape gang scandal. Over years or decades, thousands and maybe tens of thousands of vulnerable young girls were systematically raped.
Remember when Yvette Cooper promised to halve violence against women? Fast forward to today, and she's facing a firestorm of criticism in Parliament. What went wrong? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now back to the video.
Police often did not investigate. Local councils covered things up. The Crown Prosecution Service frequently failed victims.
In this video, we'll uncover the shocking truth behind Cooper's fall from grace. From grand promises to uncomfortable silences, we'll show you how a champion of women's rights found herself at the center of a national controversy. Yvette Cooper's bold promise to halve violence against women initially sparked hope and admiration. As the Shadow Home Secretary, her declaration seemed to signal a new era of commitment to women's safety. The public latched onto this promise, eager for change after years of perceived inaction. Cooper's confident demeanor in Parliament reinforced the idea that real progress was on the horizon. But as we've seen time and time again in politics, grand promises can crumble under the weight of reality. The emergence of the grooming gang scandal sent shockwaves through the nation.
And those raising concerns were frequently accused of racism. Never again can people be silenced in that way. And I pay tribute to people who have raised these cases over the years,
exposing a dark underbelly of systematic abuse that had been festering for years. As victims' stories flooded the media, the true scale of the horror became apparent. These weren't isolated incidents, but a widespread problem that had been ignored for far too long. In the face of this growing crisis, Cooper's silence became increasingly conspicuous. The public and fellow MPs alike waited for her to address the issue head-on, to show the same fervor she had displayed when making her initial promise. But as days turned into weeks, that silence grew deafening. Research revealed the staggering extent of the problem. According to a report by the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, at least 57,000 children in England and Wales were sexually abused between 2017 and 2019 alone. The true number of victims over the years is likely much higher, with some estimates suggesting hundreds of thousands of affected individuals. As these numbers came to light, the pressure on Cooper intensified. Her colleagues in Parliament began to question her commitment to addressing the issue. Conservative MP Tom Hunt publicly challenged her, stating, "If the Shadow Home Secretary is serious about tackling violence against women and girls, why has she remained silent on the grooming gang scandal?" The public's frustration grew palpable. Social media platforms buzzed with angry comments and calls for action. One viral tweet from a survivors advocacy group read, "Where is Yvette Cooper now? We need more than empty promises. We need justice for the victims of grooming gangs." Cooper's reputation, once buoyed by her ambitious declaration, began to take a serious hit. Her inaction in the face of such a pressing issue stood in stark contrast to her earlier confidence. Political commentators started to question whether her promise had been nothing more than a calculated move to gain public favor. As the controversy continued to build, it became clear that a reckoning was on the horizon. The stage was set for a parliamentary showdown, with Cooper squarely in the hot seat. The once admired Shadow Home Secretary now faced the prospect of defending her record, or lack thereof, in addressing one of the most horrific scandals in recent memory. The parliamentary chamber crackled with tension as Chris Phillips rose to speak, his eyes blazing with barely contained fury. What he was about to reveal would send shockwaves through the entire House and beyond. The Shadow Home Secretary's face betrayed no emotion, But behind her calm exterior, a storm was brewing. Phillips' scathing critique of Labour's handling of the grooming gang scandal was nothing short of devastating. He laid bare the horrifying truth. Thousands of vulnerable young girls had been systematically failed by authorities who prioritized community relations over their safety. The chamber fell silent as he spoke of cases covered up due to fears of racism accusations. It was a damning indictment of a system that had failed at every level. But Phillips wasn't finished. He called for a full national public inquiry into the grooming gang issue, arguing that previous investigations had been woefully inadequate. "We need a statutory inquiry," he declared, "one that can compel witnesses and gather evidence under oath." The gravity of his words hung heavy in the air as MPs on both sides of the aisle shifted uncomfortably in their seats. As if to drive the point home, Phillips highlighted the work of the Grooming Gangs Task Force established by the previous government. In its first year alone, it had led to 550 arrests and safeguarded 4,500 victims. The message was clear: action was possible, but only with the political will to see it through. Just when it seemed the situation couldn't get any worse for Cooper and her Labour colleagues, a bombshell dropped. Simon Danczuk, a former Labour MP, claimed he had been pressured into silence regarding the grooming gang issues he had raised. The revelation sent ripples of shock through the chamber. If a former MP had been silenced, what other dark secrets were lurking beneath the surface of this scandal? Cooper's attempts to defend her position fell flat as more MPs joined the chorus of criticism. The once admired Shadow Home Secretary now found herself on the back foot, struggling to reconcile her grand promises with the stark reality of her party's perceived failures. But it was Jess Phillips who truly ignited the powder keg. Her controversial statement about local inquiries being sufficient sparked immediate outrage. Survivors and their advocates in the public gallery erupted in anger, their cries of betrayal echoing through the chamber. It was a moment of reckoning, not just for Cooper and Phillips, but for the entire Labour Party. Cooper and Phillips's handling of the grooming gang issue has exposed a festering wound in British politics. Their grand promises to tackle violence against women now ring hollow, leaving the public questioning the sincerity of political commitments. The shadow of doubt cast over these once respected figures extends far beyond their individual reputations, potentially eroding trust in the entire political system. As Cooper reiterates her pledge to halve violence against women and girls in a decade, one can't help but wonder, how can she achieve such an ambitious goal when she's failed to address the grooming gang scandal head-on? Phillips's assertion that stopping violence should be everyone's core business now seems like empty rhetoric, especially after she dismissed calls for a public inquiry. The fallout from this debacle raises a critical question. Can Cooper and Phillips ever regain the public's trust? Their credibility has been severely damaged, and the path to redemption appears steep and treacherous. As the dust settles, it's clear that this scandal has not only tarnished their personal legacies, but also dealt a significant blow to the public's faith in political promises. The consequences of this breach of trust may reverberate through British politics for years to come.